30 years of mine and my wife's life was in this house.
There was no life, there were no animals, there were no sounds.
They had 35,000 homes, all of them had water in them, most of them had water over them.
You've got pockets of recovery, and then you have something like this. This is the lower 9. This is the levee that failed. Water came over this levee, swept down on this area, and completely washed homes off their foundations. So there's all this green space here, but this wasn't green space. This was blocks and blocks of homes. Now open space.
In a neighborhood that was almost completely destroyed during the floods. We're going to be visiting a family who's rebuilding and living in one of the FEMA trailers. They're about to be kicked out of their trailer. We're going to have a conversation with them.
You were saying they're gonna. You can't stay in your trailer?
Well, FEMA's trying
that?
to force us out of the trailer because it's getting hot now, and because of
They're worried
the
about
formaldehyde. I don't know if you remember this little lawsuit that somebody put together about this FEMA trailer thing.
With the formaldehyde.
Right. And they don't want us in the trailer any longer.
So what's going to happen?
They're not getting it.
Well, if I have to, I'll park my truck in front of it and sleep in my truck so my family can sleep in it.
This is the marking that rescue crews left. It would give the team that was here the date and whether any fatalities found in the house. Thankfully in this house it was 0.
Left of St. John's Catholic Church. It was a beautiful church, as you can see, before the storm, but it's never coming back either.
If you're sad, man, he'll make your name great. If you're sad, man, Lord, get there. If he would hold from them, you walk upright.
This is our last day on the coast. We're going to have one more press conference, then board our military flights, return to Washington for votes. And I just have 2 takeaways from this important trip. The first is that Long Island and the coasts of Mississippi and Louisiana are not all that different. These are coastal communities, so are we. When Katrina came to this community, it absolutely devastated it, ravaged it. There was loss of life, uprooted buildings, disconnected families, so all the images that we saw on television. And we learned then that we weren't prepared. We need to do even more on Long Island to ensure that we don't have that kind of destruction. It would be absolutely shameless if a Category 3 hurricane arrived on Long Island, and we are overdue for one. And after that, we looked around at the destruction and said, you know, we knew this would happen. We saw the images from Katrina. We knew that if we weren't prepared, that if the government was incompetent, if the government was inept, if we didn't have pre-positioned supplies, if we didn't have strong structures to resist the force of the winds and the water, that this would happen, and we didn't learn the lesson. That would be shameful, and there'd be no excuses for that. And so we need to rededicate ourselves to ensure that the concern and the urgency that we had when those glaring and graphic images of Katrina were shown in the aftermath of that hurricane, that we don't forget about that, and we need to rededicate ourselves to that important work. And the second takeaway is this. One of the great shames and one of the great embarrassments of what happened here was insurance company conduct. You know, there were a lot of people that I spoke to who told me that they knew that the storm was coming. They evacuated. They knew that when they came back, there may not be much left. But they said, but you know, we paid pretty high premiums, and we just assumed that our insurance company was going to cover us. And then they learned within days and weeks after that the insurance companies were jumping through every loophole they could find not to cover them. And so people lost their entire homes and didn't have a penny for rebuilding, didn't have a penny to tide them over while they lived in FEMA trailers, didn't have a penny to get their lives together. They paid a pretty penny to the insurance companies, But when it came time for the insurance companies to meet their obligation, they wouldn't do it in too many cases. They said that these people were not covered for wind, but were covered for water. They said these people were not covered for water, but were covered for wind. They found every excuse they could to avoid paying back these people who paid their premiums. And so the House of Representatives has, in fact, passed legislation that would allow people to buy what's called a multi-peril policy, so that never again would people be faced with the decision of wind versus water, water versus wind. If you pay the premium, the insurance company has to pay the claim. We've passed that in the House of Representatives. It's been bogged down in the Senate. It's time to get moving. It's just a matter of time before another hurricane strikes the United States and very possibly Long Island. And we want to make sure that we are prepared and that we are insured. And that's what I'm going to be concentrating on when I return to Washington.